Hello parents. If you don't know who I am and haven't been able to meet me yet, my name is Neal. I'm the school counselor here at St. Stephen Catholic School. I'm starting my second full year here, and I'm very excited for the start of the new school year. And what I want to do is spend some time talking about the ways that parents can best support us here in our mission to deliver a quality Catholic education to your children. Because you entrust us with that goal, but obviously we can't do that without you. And I'm not talking about from a volunteering or fundraising aspect, although those are very important and needed and appreciated. I'm talking about the role that you play in their very upbringing, because you are the foundation of that. So what I want to do is start with a question or a topic that's been floating around in the parenting world for a while now, and it's a little divisive amongst some, and I don't know that it has to be, and it all really centers around how some are defining a certain word, and that word is friend. So, can you be friends with your child? Did this scene from Mean Girls just immediately pop into anyone else's head? But really, think about it. Can you be friends with your child? Well, let's think about it here. When we think of a friendship, we might think of a relationship. So, check mark, you definitely have that with your child. Are we having fun together? Friends have fun together, don't they? And yes, parents should obviously have fun with their friends sometimes, but is that truly what defines a friendship? Well, we need to think about that. What do you consider a friendship, and also what does your child consider a friendship? Because the lines can certainly become blurry there. Well, if we want to go by a pure definition here, I will go with the American Psychological Association, and they define a friendship as a voluntary relationship between two or more people that is relatively long-lasting, and in which those involved tend to be concerned with meeting the other's needs and interests as well as satisfying their own desires. Well, there are two things that stand out to me in that big word salad, and the first is the word voluntary. Because parenting isn't voluntary. The act of choosing to become a parent is voluntary, but the act itself isn't, and it can't be. It's a commitment. And the second is where it says meeting the other's needs. Because the child is not here to meet the needs of adults. The adults are here to meet the needs of the child. They're in charge. And when I use the phrase in charge, that's not me going full authoritarian with the idea of parenting and leaning into a very outdated idea that children should be seen and not heard, because I don't buy that. I think it's great for children to be able to express their thoughts and opinions on things, because first of all, it can really help us in understanding if they're comprehending the things that we're trying to teach them. But what happens if parenting becomes too permissive with this? What if there's an overvalidation of feelings and responses, and then all of a sudden we're trying to relate to a child on their level? Well, that's where things can get complicated. Ask yourself if you've ever found yourself in that situation. I can speak for myself in knowing that I've had kids come into my office to speak to me about poor decisions that they've made in a moment of anger or frustration or excitement. And in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, you know what? I probably would have done the same thing at that age. But that's where we have to stop ourselves, because we can't relate to them on their level anymore. Kids have a completely different perspective and outlook on life, and that is fine for them to share that with their peers. But do we as adults have those same perspectives? No, we don't. We have jobs and bills and taking care of a family and all those other things to worry about. And not only that, we also have the experience of growing up behind us. We have a better understanding of right from wrong. Now, it may have been taught to us from a very young age, but now we really understand why what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And some of us have had to learn it the tough way. So back to the beginning, friends or no. And I just want to say that I'm not here to make anyone change their mind on how they feel about this. I'm just here to make you think. So let's think. Think of it this way. There are roles that parents and friends serve. There's the emotional role, which friends serve. Friends serve an emotional role that's built on love, affection, and self-esteem, whereas parents serve a functional role that's built on doing the necessary things to make sure that their children survive and thrive. From the moment they're born, you clean them, you feed them, you protect them from the elements. And you may be thinking to yourself, the emotional role that's built on love and affection, do I not also have this as a parent? And absolutely you do. The emotional and functional role are not mutually exclusive in parenting. But it's important to know that the functional role is not present in friendship, and it is absolutely necessary in parenting. You're not just here to love them. You're here to make sure that they develop and mature, because the ultimate goal, whether it's a comfortable feeling or not, is to prepare them to live independently. So how does this all play into school? What is the functional role that you're fulfilling to help them have the best year possible? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to approach this from an academic and social standpoint. So I'm going to start with the academic first. So academically speaking, how can you best support them in your functional role? Well, the first thing we need you to do is obviously to get them here, because we can't teach them if they're not here. And I think sometimes we think that, 2 or 3 days a month if they're missing school, that might not seem like a lot when you're not really thinking about it, but that quickly adds up to 10% of the school year missed. And that's actually considered chronic absenteeism. And there are so many potential negative academic consequences that can come from that. So please, get them to us, and also get them to us on time, because any class time missed can really add up. And obviously, we know, living in the area, how traffic can be sometimes. Traffic is traffic. And we do know that there are those rare instances where there's car accidents or anything else that might be going on that sets everyone behind. And believe me, we're very understanding with that and accommodating with that, because chances are, if it is something that's taking place that has made the majority of students late, chances are it has also made some staff members late. So we are understanding that. But any other time, have them here on time, have them here ready to learn. Car line closes at 7:48 and classes begin at 7:50. And the next thing is, once they're here, what you can really do to help us is to pay attention and have communication with your teachers. And hopefully you all were able to attend your child's teacher presentations at Back to School Night, and you had the opportunity to learn their process for assignments and projects and tests and ask any questions, because they do want you to be involved with your child's academic growth. And I'm also going to take this as an opportunity to say, please read Tidbits. Tidbits, that's our weekly newsletter that goes out on Thursdays, and it's filled with important information about upcoming events in the school. And all staff have worked really, really hard to include information that we think would be beneficial for everyone to have all in one place. So please be on the lookout for Tidbits and read what's in there. And the next thing I want to talk about is assignments, because you'll see on the slide it says help with assignments, but you might notice that little asterisk there. Because you might think to yourself, help, but how much help is too much help? And there really isn't a cut and dry answer to this, because with our school being pre-K through 8, assignments are going to look very different across the board. But what we can all do is to make sure that each student has the materials that they need to complete their assignments and projects, because they really can't go anywhere if they don't have what they need. And from there, if it's a project that your child should be doing, I would say, don't be afraid to brainstorm with your child, but let them take the lead. Let's say that if they have a biography that they have to do about somebody, have them think about and list people that they might find interesting. And if they can't think of or don't know of any person right off the top of their head, maybe start with some of their own interest and see how they can find a historical person who relates to that. That's just an example. And at the end of the day, if you're just not sure how much help you should be giving, go to the source. talk to your teacher. They would love to help you with that. That goes back to having communication with your teacher. And the next thing I want to say is, don't step in to save the day right away. I'm going to give this example that my husband gave to me. He is a pilot in the Air Force, and right now his primary role is he is an instructor of instructors. He is a teacher who evaluates the way other instructor pilots are teaching students how to fly an airplane. And he gave me this quote. He said, anytime we step in to take over to do something for them, the student, we're removing an opportunity for them to learn. Which was a little concerning for me because I'm thinking, how many mistakes can you make while flying an airplane? But it's more than you'd think, apparently. So what I'm trying to say here is, are mistakes going to happen along the way while your child is learning? Absolutely. And we want them to. If pilots can make a mistake flying an airplane, your child can make a mistake on a math problem here and there. And that's how they learn from it. Okay? We want them to understand that mistakes are part of the learning process. But that can't happen if we're stepping in to take over in order to avoid letting them make a mistake in the first place. So yes, be there and make sure that they have the materials and everything that they need to create and complete their project or assignment, and be involved without taking over when you don't see perfection. Because at the end of the day, if it's a second grade assignment or project, we should still be able to tell that a second grader did it. And that doesn't mean a flawless presentation. Because they're not here to meet our ideas of perfection. They're just here to give their best, and we don't want them to be unwilling or afraid to try that because of an idea that's been planted in their head, intentionally or not, that their best just isn't good enough. And now I want to move in to the social aspect. So how our students are interacting with each other. So how can you, with your functional role as a parent, help us with that? You'll see at the top that it says, simply be kind. Kindness is key. Above all else, be kind. You may have all seen that our school theme this year is just that, just be kind. And we are all in on it. We have assemblies geared towards the message. My guidance lessons for classes this year will continue to center around all the components that go into kindness, so things like respect, empathy, generosity, teamwork, and integrity. So that's just a bit of what we're going to be doing here. Because any school in America will want their students to be nice to each other, but as a Catholic school with our mission, we need our kids to be kind to one another, the way that God intended. But it can't go without saying that the very foundations of kindness are taught at home. We reinforce them here, but they're taught at home. Because you're the very first teachers that these children have, and they will continue to take their lead from the examples that you put forth. So do know that they are watching and they are listening. So look for any opportunity you can to show examples of the golden rule, or choosing kindness and composure, even when it's not always the first thing shown to us. And I'm going to go into a little bit of that next. Now I want to talk about teaching assertiveness. And I'm really advocating for this because I think that it can solve a lot of the everyday arguments that occur between students before they turn into something worse. Because it's a very necessary skill when it comes to conflict resolution. There are times when I have students come to talk to me and they tell me about a problem that they're having with another student. And they'll tell me what the student did, what they said or what they did to them, and I'll ask them how that made them feel. And then I'll ask them, did you tell them that? And most of the time they tell me no. Or sometimes we're unfortunately having to talk about making better decisions next time because they've already responded to that student in a way that's gotten them in trouble. So we need to make our students feel confident standing up for themselves. And when I say that, I'm not speaking about them standing up for themselves physically, but instead by standing up for themselves by being assertive and letting their peers know that they've taken things too far. I deliver lessons on conflict resolution, and I always bring up the importance of an I message. These are messages that focus on how the speaker feels rather than going after the person listening. An example of that would be, hey, I really don't like the way you've been talking about my hair lately, as opposed to, you're a real jerk for talking about my hair like that. Your hair looks like garbage. There's obviously a difference. And you may be thinking to yourself, but why should I be teaching them how to protect the feelings of another person who did something wrong in the first place? And my answer to that is that at the end of the day, we need to remember that we're still working with kids. And a lot of these arguments, I will say, that happen here, they occur amongst friends. Disagreements are part of friendships. And these friendships sometimes involve a lot of joking with each other, and sometimes people end up saying something rude or insensitive without thinking. And sometimes they don't realize that what they've said was rude or insensitive because the other person doesn't let them know that. Now, not always. I'm certainly aware that there are sometimes kids who just mean on purpose. But what we ultimately don't want is for insults to be met with insults, for negativity to just be met with more negativity, because we're never going to get anywhere with that. We have to be teaching a way to arrive at a solution rather than just to continue with a problem. So we want them to stand up for themselves by letting the student in question know that what they're doing is not appreciated and needs to stop. And we also want them to use the appropriate avenues of letting an adult at school know if it continues after it has been asked to stop. Because there's a lot we can do to put a stop to something quickly if we know about it. So please, never assume that we're ignoring a situation that your child brings home to you. Because we can't help or intervene in a situation that we don't know about. And it is impossible for us to hear every conversation that happens here at school. It's an unfortunate reality that not everyone is going to be kind, no matter how much we teach them to be. And I always encourage kids to ignore what they can, because there are things out there that are worthy of our anger, and then sometimes there are things that are just annoying, and oftentimes the annoying can go away if it's ignored. And I'm not saying that I think that we should just cut kids loose and say, you're on your own, figure it out. There are obviously times when an adult needs to be involved. Say if someone has put hands on them, if someone's threatening them, if comments are becoming sexual or racist in any way, we want them to get an adult involved at that point. But I'm also just suggesting that we teach and reinforce the strategies that can help them solve small conflicts on their own in an appropriate way, because we're doing them a disservice if we don't do that. None of us are going to want to be involved in every conflict that they have into their 20s. So we have to give them an opportunity to practice those skills now. And now I want to go into something a little bit more serious. And that is how we want you to check in with your child often to monitor for any signs of anxiety or depression. Now, all children and all adults are going to experience times of anxiety and sadness. Those are normal emotions for all of us. But when they stay with us for too long without learning or using healthy coping mechanisms, that's when it can become concerning. And the thing is that they're not always going to come to you and verbally state these things. So really encourage talking about feelings with your child. Let them know that you're here to listen and to help them through those feelings. And let them know that they have someone at school that they can come and talk to, especially if it's something that's happened at school that's causing them to feel that way. Because that is my primary role here. There are schools out there who use their counselors as a schedule maker or an assessment coordinator. That's not what I do here, no. I say that I'm in the listening business, right? And another thing that I want to say is there is a great book out now, and it's called The Anxious Generation. And in this book, the author lays out countless studies that examine the role that technology, particularly smartphones and tablets, what their role has been in youth mental illness. Now, studies have shown that major depression in youth, starting at the age of 12, has increased 161% in boys and 145% in girls since 2010. Now, correlation doesn't mean causation, but just think about how smartphones really started to evolve in 2010. I don't think it's a stretch to suggest that these have played a role in the growing numbers of mental illness in youth. It has never been easier to have a constant stream of negative information and negative communication right at our fingertips. So please monitor their technology use, what they're saying to others, what others are saying to them, what they're searching for on the internet. Because the reality is that our school is not immune to students who have anxious or even very dark depressed thoughts. So monitor their technology use and keep an open communication on how they're feeling about school, their friendship, or anything else that might be occurring in their home or in their community. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about, excuse me, is accountability. Because I think this is a huge one in the separation between friendship and parenting. And that is the role of really having to hold one accountable for their actions. So let's just give an example. Let's say I have a student who has done something that they weren't supposed to do, and now they are in trouble with their teacher. Now, that student may badmouth their teacher to their friends, and their friends may join in and badmouth that teacher right back with them, because that is just what kids do sometimes. And that same child may go home to their parent and badmouth that teacher to their parent, but does the parent react in the same way that their friends do? Please tell me the answer is no. Because if your children hear you disrespecting us in front of them, that is just teaching them that it is okay for them to disrespect us. We're not here to give kids the answers that they want to hear just so they won't be upset with us. And part of that is holding them accountable for their actions, both the good and the bad. And it's teaching the importance of weighing choices and consequences, because you can always choose your actions. You don't always get to choose the consequences. And over the years, I've worked with a lot of kids on making good choices when they're experiencing tough emotions. It's a tough thing for anyone to do, and I'm sure you all as parents have to do it all the time. But I want to say that it's important to know that there's nothing wrong with validating feelings, okay? Because they can't help those. Those are an involuntary reaction to something. But we don't have to validate their behavior, especially when it's the wrong one. No, that's when we step in to teach the reality, a tough reality of things like, just because someone did this to you doesn't mean it was okay for you to do that. Just because so-and-so didn't get in trouble when they did this doesn't mean it was okay for you to do it too. So-and-so just didn't get caught. Just because you didn't hear the assignment or write it down doesn't mean that there wasn't an assignment. It's a lot of calling out excuses and squashing them in the hopes of getting a different response the next time. But that can't happen if we create a pattern of accepting the excuses and allowing them to become that child's idea of reality. Their idea of reality that says, that teacher just doesn't like me. I'm the only one who ever gets in trouble. Or, they don't ever tell us the assignment, so how should I know about them? No. Always bring it back to, what did you do? What happened? What can you do differently the next time? And what is likely to happen next time when you do that? Because they have to learn that they're responsible for their own actions. And parents and educators, we're constantly working as a team to make that happen. So parents, toughest job you're ever going to have, right? Rewarding for sure, and we really, really want to thank you for letting us be a part of their spiritual and educational growth. And when Mrs. Umo approached me about doing this presentation, I couldn't help myself. All these thoughts started running through my head. I started asking myself things like, okay, how can parents help? What are we trying to accomplish here? What is the ultimate goal of parenting? And that's when I decided to go to one of my best sources. I called my mom. And she gave me this quote, and she was adamant that she didn't come up with it, and I believe her, but she's just the first person that I ever heard say it. She said, "You've got to work your way out of a job." And I can only imagine that it will be the toughest job to lose, but that's ultimately what we're doing here, right? We're teaching them and getting them ready to not need us anymore. So going back to the emotional and functional roles that I was talking about earlier, think of it as working so hard to get out of that functional role that there's only the emotional role left, because that's what happened with us. My parents are absolutely my friends now. So I'm going to go back to that question from the beginning. Can you be friends with your child? I'll just say this. You only have so long as a parent. And when you do it well, you'll have a friend later. So be their parent now, and let's work together to have a great school year. Thank you for your time, and go Mustangs.